If there's one thing modern crossover boxing has mastered, it's turning a simple matchup into a public trial. Andrew Tate versus Chase DeMoor wasn't promoted like a normal fight, where the best man wins on points. It was sold like a verdict. Can Tate still fight for real? Or is this comeback just another publicity stunt wrapped in gloves and cameras? From the very first clips, the story was drenched in prediction, ego, and pressure. Tate didn't just say he would win, he promised a first-round knockout, the kind of statement that forces the audience to pick a side before the bell even rings. And DeMoor, sitting on the Misfits heavyweight champion identity, didn't treat Tate like a legend returning, he treated him like a brand trying to buy credibility. Then everything escalated. Talk about a black eye, debates over size, accusations about contract terms, and the uncomfortable optics of Tate being presented as an executive figure inside the same organization he's headlining. In this ecosystem, perception is currency, and both men understood that the real fight started weeks earlier, on cameras, on social feeds, in those tense face-offs, where every second is designed to humiliate the other guy into making a mistake later. But here's the twist. When the gloves touch, none of that matters. Not the boat entrances, not the memes, not the narratives people want to be true, because the ring is the one place where confidence becomes measurable. This video breaks down the entire story as a new, original, documentary-style timeline. What was promised, what was questioned, what was manipulated, and the exact moment the buildup stopped being theater and turned into consequence. And by the end, one question will hang over everything. Was this a comeback that proved skill, or a night that proved control? From the very beginning, Andrew Tate framed this matchup as more than a win or a loss. He framed it as a verdict on his legitimacy. After nearly 5 years away from sanctioned competition, Tate didn't hint at victory or speak cautiously like most fighters returning from a long layoff. He made a declaration: a first-round knockout, no exceptions. That single claim changed the entire nature of the fight. It wasn't just marketing, it was a public line in the sand. Either he would deliver exactly what he promised, or every doubt people had been holding on to would explode at once. This approach wasn't accidental. Tate understands attention cycles better than most athletes. By predicting an early finish, he forced the conversation to revolve around one thing: can he still do real damage under real rules? Every interview, every clip, every reaction online came back to that question, and in doing so, Tate turned pressure into a weapon. If the fight dragged on, critics would call it a failure. If he looked hesitant, they'd call him washed. The only acceptable outcome, by his own design, was dominance. On the other side, Chase DeMoor didn't treat these statements as empty talk. He responded by challenging Tate's confidence directly, questioning whether it was rooted in preparation or nostalgia. DeMoor emphasized activity, momentum, and size, presenting himself as the fighter who had stayed sharp while Tate built a persona. He didn't need to promise a knockout. His strategy was to let Tate's words carry the weight and collapse under them. This clash of narratives mattered because it set expectations before a single punch was thrown. Tate wasn't returning quietly. He was demanding to be judged immediately. DeMoor wasn't chasing legacy. He was trying to expose illusion. By the time fight week arrived, the bout had already become a referendum, not just on skill, but on whether confidence backed by reputation can survive against confidence backed by activity. And once expectations harden like this, the ring stops being a stage. It becomes a test chamber. At the heart of this matchup sat a contrast that couldn't be ignored: momentum versus memory. Chase DeMoor entered the fight as an active competitor, coming off multiple bouts within a single year, operating in a rhythm that only consistent competition can create. Win or lose, activity sharpens timing, hardens instincts, and conditions the mind to chaos. DeMoor's argument was simple and dangerous. While Tate talked, he fought. While Tate trained in controlled environments, DeMoor absorbed real punches under lights, with judges, pressure, and consequences. Andrew Tate, on the other hand, carried something DeMoor couldn't manufacture overnight: history. Years of high-level kickboxing experience, championship rounds, and survival under elite pressure. But history is a double-edged sword. In combat sports, memory fades faster than muscle. 5 years away from sanctioned competition isn't just time off, it's time where reactions slow, where judgment becomes theoretical, where danger exists mostly in training clips and highlight reels. Critics questioned whether Tate's confidence was built on what he once was, rather than what he still is. This tension defined the pre-fight discourse. DeMoor positioned himself as the present, the man operating in real time. Tate represented the past, the known quantity trying to prove he still belongs in the present. Fans split sharply along that line. Some believed experience outweighs activity. Others argued that the ring punishes nostalgia more brutally than arrogance. What made this matchup volatile was that both arguments were valid. Momentum can overwhelm hesitation, but memory, when intact, allows fighters to recognize patterns before they unfold. Tate didn't deny the layoff. Instead, he reframed it as deliberate preparation, claiming his return wasn't rushed but calculated. In his mind, he hadn't been inactive, he had been waiting. By the time they approached fight night, the real uncertainty wasn't physical, it was temporal. Could an athlete reach backward into experience and pull it forward intact? Or does time quietly tax even the most disciplined fighters? That question hovered over the ring long before the bell, and it was about to be answered in the only way combat sports allow, without explanation and without mercy. Long before the first punch was thrown, this fight had already been won or lost in the public arena. The buildup became a carefully staged performance where image, psychology, and perception mattered almost as much as skill. Andrew Tate understood this terrain better than almost anyone involved. Every appearance, every delay, every dramatic entrance was intentional. Arriving by yacht, making opponents wait, speaking in absolutes, these weren't random acts of ego, they were signals. Tate wasn't just promoting a fight, he was asserting hierarchy before the bell ever rang. For Chase DeMoor, this created a dilemma. Respond emotionally, and he plays into Tate's game. Ignore it, and he risks appearing overwhelmed. DeMoor chose confrontation. He mocked the theatrics, highlighted Tate's age, questioned his conditioning, and repeatedly brought the conversation back to reality. Contracts, weight limits, rehydration clauses, and perceived advantages written into the fight terms. This wasn't accidental. By shifting the narrative to fairness and structure, DeMoor attempted to reposition Tate not as a fearless warrior, but as a man protecting himself behind influence. The audience watched closely. Some saw Tate's behavior as confidence bordering on inevitability. Others saw overcompensation. Combat sports fans are ruthless judges of authenticity, and the line between control and insecurity is razor thin. The black eye, seen in training footage, became symbolic. To supporters, it meant serious preparation. To skeptics, it suggested vulnerability. The same image fueled opposite conclusions, depending on what viewers already believed. This is where the fight became psychological warfare in its purest form. Tate projected certainty, DeMoor projected hunger. Tate spoke like someone defending a legacy. DeMoor spoke like someone trying to take it. Neither man blinked publicly, but pressure accumulates quietly. Every interview, every stare down, every social media clip added weight to expectations that would eventually collapse onto both fighters the moment the bell rang. By fight week, the narrative had outgrown the sport itself. It was no longer just about who punches harder or moves better. It was about whether dominance can be declared or must be proven. Tate had built a world where defeat felt impossible. DeMoor had built a moment where upsetting that world felt inevitable. When spectacle becomes this loud, silence inside the ring becomes terrifying, and soon there would be no more words to hide behind. As the fight drew closer, the conversation shifted away from personalities and toward power structures. Not power in the physical sense, but power behind the scenes. Andrew Tate's newly announced role as a combat executive within Misfits Boxing changed how many viewers interpreted everything about this matchup. What once looked like bravado now raised a more uncomfortable question. Who actually controls the environment of this fight? Chase DeMoor leaned into that question hard. He publicly questioned the bout's conditions, claiming the fight was marketed as heavyweight, while the contract allegedly capped both fighters around 200 pounds, closer to cruiserweight territory. He pointed to possible rehydration limits, house equipment, and rule negotiations that, at least from his perspective, seemed to favor Tate's strengths. Whether every claim was fully accurate mattered less than how it landed with the audience. The idea that Tate might be fighting from a position of institutional advantage resonated with fans already skeptical of crossover boxing. Tate, for his part, dismissed the criticism entirely. His stance was simple: fighters fight. Contracts are agreed upon voluntarily. No one is forced to sign. In his framing, DeMoor's complaints weren't revelations, they were preemptive excuses. This response fit Tate's long-standing worldview. Control isn't something to apologize for, it's something to wield. And in many ways, this moment revealed the deepest contrast between the two men. DeMoor framed fairness as legitimacy. Tate framed dominance as legitimacy. The issue of fairness matters in combat sports because outcomes are supposed to feel earned. When fans suspect imbalance, even a decisive win can feel hollow. That's the risk Tate carried into this bout. Not the risk of losing, but the risk of not being believed, even in victory. DeMoor understood that dynamic. By speaking about contracts and influence, he planted doubt that could survive the final bell, regardless of the result. This part of the buildup wasn't loud or flashy. It was subtle, procedural, and deeply uncomfortable. It forced the audience to ask whether this was still a contest between two fighters or something closer to a managed spectacle. And once that question enters the conversation, it doesn't leave easily. By the time fight night approached, the ring was no longer just a place to prove toughness. It was a place to prove legitimacy under scrutiny. When the bell finally rang, months of noise collapsed into seconds of reality. There were no entrances, no microphones, no theatrics, only distance, timing, and intent. Andrew Tate didn't start cautiously. He moved forward with the urgency of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. This wasn't about winning rounds or proving durability. It was about delivering on a promise that had been repeated too many times to walk back. Chase DeMoor entered composed but alert, aware that the first exchange could define the entire fight. He had the size, the recent activity, and the momentum. But what he didn't have was time. Tate closed distance quickly, reading reactions rather than forcing chaos. His movements were economical, controlled, and unmistakably deliberate. Then it happened. One clean connection, perfectly timed, landed before DeMoor could reset. The sequence unfolded fast enough that there was no room for reinterpretation. The fight ended exactly as Tate had predicted by knockout. In that moment, the debate ended. Not because every question had been answered, but because the central one had. Could Tate still hurt someone under sanctioned rules after years away? The answer was no longer theoretical, it was physical. The knockout didn't erase controversy or criticism, but it did render them secondary. Technique, timing, and experience spoke louder than speculation. For DeMoor, the loss was abrupt but not humiliating. He took a risk against a highly experienced striker and paid for it. In crossover boxing, that risk is often the price of opportunity. For Tate, the result carried symbolic weight. It validated his insistence that preparation mattered more than momentum, and that confidence, when backed by discipline, can still translate into violence under bright lights. The knockout didn't just end a fight, it ended a narrative cycle. Everything before it became context, not evidence. In combat sports, truth arrives suddenly, and when it does, it leaves very little room for debate. When the noise fades and the clips stop looping, what remains is not the knockout itself, but what it represents. This fight was never just about Andrew Tate returning to the ring or Chase DeMoor testing himself against a polarizing figure. It was about credibility, in an era where combat sports increasingly blur into spectacle, and in that sense, the outcome delivered a clear, if uncomfortable, message. Andrew Tate didn't win because of hype, influence, or theatrics. He won because timing, experience, and preparation still matter when the bell rings. The first-round knockout didn't erase controversy surrounding him, nor did it settle every argument critics raised during the buildup. But it did settle the only argument that truly matters in a fight: whether the skill is real. On that night, it was. For DeMoor, the loss does not define his career. Crossover boxing thrives on risk, and stepping into the ring with someone carrying years of high-level striking experience is a gamble few are willing to take. He took it, and the cost was immediate. In combat sports history, that choice is often respected more than protected records. The larger takeaway is what this moment says about modern fighting culture. Promotion can amplify reality, but it cannot replace it. Contracts, narratives, and power structures all shape perception, yet none of them can stop a clean punch from ending a fight. That's why combat sports remain unforgiving and honest in ways few other spectacles are. This wasn't the end of a story. It was a checkpoint. For Tate, it reopens doors he claimed never closed. For the audience, it forces a reassessment of where performance ends and persona begins. And for the sport itself, it serves as a reminder that no matter how loud the buildup becomes, the truth still arrives quietly, decisively, and without explanation.